We're on. So I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Board of Selectmen of July 21st, 2015. First order is, it says approval of minutes, but there's no minutes to approve. So confirmation of future meeting dates. I got August 4th and August 18th. Everybody okay with those dates?
I am actually away on the 4th, but I should be able to do remote
Okay.
on that.
You'll be making history. That'll be the first Board of Selectmen
How about
remote
that?
broadcast that we've ever had
Participation, yeah.
It's great.
in the history of Milton. Okay, let's see, item 4, approval of payroll and vendor warrants.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the current payroll and vendor warrants.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Item 5 is citizen speak. Any citizens wishing to speak? Seeing none. Okay, item 6 is a public hearing on 4 new conduits by Eversource. Well, and I'll just read to be in conformity with the requirements of Section 22, Chapter 166 of the General Laws. The board will conduct a public hearing upon the request of NStar Electric, which is now Eversource, for a grant of location to install conduit in Reedsdale Road. All abutters have been notified, and a representative from Eversource will be present to answer any questions from the board or the public. Engineering has sent its recommendations and requirements, and that will be requirements that will be included in the preceding proposed motion. So, does anybody have any? First of all, are there any abutters that want to make any comments? Seeing none, are there any?
We want to ask Eversource to just give us a
us
brief
an idea?
update on this.
That's fine.
Glendale?
Yes.
Yes, I'm Sheila Gillis, here on behalf of NStar Electric, doing business as Eversource. We request a grant of location to install approximately 10 feet of conduit at pole 61/3, and this is necessary to provide service to 26 Glendale Road.
Okay. Questions about that one?
You want to do one motion or 4? Their style is
we
one.
have them as one motion, and seeing there's no residents here, I think we can do them as one motion.
Yeah, so I can make a motion to approve a grant of location to NStar Electric Company doing business as Eversource Energy to install approximately 10 feet of conduit from pole number 61/3 for underground service to 26 Glendale Road, approximately 6 feet of conduit from pole number 4218 on Edge Hill Road for underground service to 65 Westvale Road, approximately 5 feet of conduit from pole number 8825 on Church Street for underground service to 558 Adams Street, and approximately 9 feet of conduit from pole number 183.5 on Lodge Street for underground service to the new temple at 18 Schulman Way, contingent upon the application securing a right-of-way excavation permit through the Department of Public Works prior to installation at each location.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
Just that we have a recommendation from the DPW and the town engineer to go ahead and approve this. Has the work been done, Sheila?
I believe so, yes. We're just going to make the connection at the top of the pole, basically.
Okay.
I'm a direct abutter on Lodge Street. I thought you were going through street by street.
Okay. If you have a comment, certainly.
I had a question.
Could you come up, please?
Sure. And, my name is Karen Stone. I'm a direct abutter on Lodge Street. And I had a question about the 9 feet. There wasn't anything sent to us in terms of what it would look like, where, or any information. It was a...
Okay, basically, this is the pole here, and the conduit just runs basically from the back side of the pole straight into the private property here.
So it's above ground and it would run out off of the pole?
No, it runs underground. There's a riser on the pole, and then the conduit goes underground to the private property.
So the
there's no
9,
wires or nothing to that effect.
so the 9 feet are underground?
Yes.
Okay, that wasn't clear in the document we were sent. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or any other butters out there that would have comments on, or questions on any? Okay, seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too. Okay. Okay, item number 7 is the public hearing on super petroleum, which has been continued from June 16th. And I understand, Bill, that we don't have all the information that we requested yet.
Right. Town council's requested some information that hasn't come in from the building inspector yet. The establishment's owner is due to meet with the neighborhood association next Wednesday night on the 29th, and we're requesting that it get continued until August 18th.
Yeah, Emily, would you like to come up to the table? Or? Okay, so it doesn't seem to make much sense to have a public hearing when we don't have all the information, clearly. So I'd certainly be in favor of just continuing this public hearing to a future date. And I would suggest the August 18th meeting, seeing as David won't be here on the August 4th meeting.
That works for me.
That works.
That's fine with everybody? Okay. So do I have a motion to continue?
I move that we continue the hearing until August 18th.
And I'll second that.
Do we have to give a specific time at 7 p.m.?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thanks, Bill. You may as well just stay here.
I figured I'd just stay at this end.
You're next to the
Since I'm
agenda anyway. So item 8 is a discussion of the Planning Board October Town Meeting articles with the Chair of the Planning Board, Emily Keyes-Ennis.
So, thank you for having me. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the schedule for getting from here to the Fall Town meeting. As you know, the Planning Board is doing a new zoning initiative. It's the first time we've tried this. And we are having our second public forum, actually this coming Tuesday, July 28th, 7 o'clock at the Milton High School. And at that forum, we're going to be introducing the draft language and then talking to people about some of the key elements of the different articles that we're looking at. So from that to October, we've actually got a very crunched time schedule, partly due to what we need to get done and partly due to just the regular deadlines for the warrant. So we're asking for a little bit of flexibility from you guys for this session. What we'd like to do is we have one more forum in August, probably the week of August 17th. We haven't confirmed that date, but we'll do by next week. And then we'll have a public hearing in September. September 11th is our first meeting of September. So what we'd like to do is on August 4th, when your warrant opens and closes, we'd like to submit the draft articles that we have now. And I think almost all of them have been submitted to Tim for our discussion at our meeting this week. And then we'd like to tweak those. So you'll have those. Those will be the maximum number of articles that you're going to see from us. And then after this forum and after the forum in August and after the public hearing, we'd like to tweak those articles based on the input that we're giving so that on September 14th, we would give to you and to the warrant committee the final language based on our public hearing for those articles. We'd like that to be the actual language that goes into the warrant. And that's to avoid all of the different colored sheets of paper that come out to town meeting members. So that's a little bit of a departure from usual practice. Next year, we don't expect that to happen for October because we'll be able to start our process earlier in the year. But just for this one, we'd like to do that. And again, it's to make things going in a lot more clear. Now, of course, what that means is that the warrant committee will have had the articles from you after the 4th, that won't be in their final form. They're pretty close, but they won't be in their exact final form. And some of them may be pooled, and that's the second part. We don't want to take anything to town meeting that's not completely ready for town meeting. So again, in addition to changing the language, we'd like the flexibility to make that determination after our public hearing and say, you know what, this isn't ready, so that nothing goes before town meeting that isn't ready to be discussed.
I think we may have to formally open and close the warrant again to pull an article, I believe.
It depends on how, yeah, that process is up to you. I just wanted to sort of ask for that flexibility and see how you wanted to do it. Each town does it differently, so.
Milton has done it differently over time.
And Milton actually, certainly in the time I've been involved, it's changed from how it used to be. So, you know, and that's fine. I actually know one town, I was telling Anne Marie last week, one town that doesn't, they have a Maytown meeting, but they actually don't open and close their warrant until March. So, but because the warrant committee will be getting articles that aren't in their draft form, I've already talked with them. They're open to what you're open with, but I've also said that I will meet with them as we go through. So they're not actually starting, they'll be starting their deliberations on these articles before September 14th, so that they're not getting the final text and just then starting their deliberations. I will keep them updated and let them know what's happening and what's changing based on public comment. So we have the visual preference survey is still on the web. That will be open till August 11th. And then after this, the zoning that we've submitted so far, the draft, will be going up on the web so that it'll be ready for next week's meeting. We're going to set up a way for people to do public comment as well on the web. So if they weren't able to see it, they'll still be able to go online and read the draft articles. That comment will also close August 11th, so we'll be ready to tweak everything for the August meeting. Then at the August meeting, we'll open up a second round of public comment, which will close about a week before the public hearing, so we have time to tweak the language again before our public hearing. So it's an unusual method that we're doing for this town. We've not done this before, so it's kind of an experiment to see how much public comment we can get using the web, understanding that it's summer, but and not everybody's going to be able to make the meetings, but we're certainly hoping that you can be flexible and work with us for this meeting. So that's what I offer.
The process sounds great. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
getting the additional public input, I think, is great. So,
I took the visual survey. I thought it was long, but it was very good. And there were a
Okay,
lot
I'm
of
glad.
different choices and options for you to weigh in on and give your thoughts as to what style and design we might like to see in Milton. So I thought the survey was very good. I also think that the public forum, I could not attend it. I had a work commitment, but going through that process of having the public forum with another follow-up or two this summer has been a good way to approach all of these zoning articles. You have a lot of things on your plate from what I've seen of watching the planning board meetings on television.
We have been busy. Well, one of the things we're doing, you know, is not all of these articles will necessarily go forward with October, but by starting the conversation now, anything that we don't take forward to October, they may be in a position to take forward to May, they may be in a position to take forward, or they should be in a position to take forward to next October with additional public input. But it starts a conversation, it starts people thinking about the more complex issues, which is really good. Milton Cable has been doing a great job. They filmed the last one. I believe they're going to be filming the next two forums as well. Our planning office has been fantastic. Tim took the PowerPoint, and he's the one who put it into that survey that you took and set that up so that people would do it. So he's been sort of managing all the behind-the-scenes stuff, which is fantastic. So we're getting there.
Good.
So it seems we should take a flexible approach here. Given the number of articles and the complexity of the articles that are going forward, and the interest, a lot of this came out of the Maytown meeting with the sign illumination issue and the condominium issue. So there's a lot of public interest in these topics, and I think we'd want to be flexible.
I agree.
Preparing the warrant is always such a difficult process anyway, with deadlines and articles coming in, and are they in before the dedeadline? Are they in the right form, and do we have to make changes? So I think we should take a flexible approach.
If it's going to avoid last-minute changes,
Yeah.
I certainly agree.
That is absolutely a goal. We don't want to, with something as complex as some of these articles are, we want to try and avoid, I mean, sometimes it's unavoidable, but we want to schedule this process so there are as few last-minute changes as possible, so.
Good.
Okay.
All right.
That's
Thank
fine.
you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Emily.
Emily.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, Item 9 on the agenda is the quarterly report of the police chief. So the police chief just walked in, so I welcome out to the table. Chief Wells?
Evening. Thank you
Hi.
for having me.
Evening, Chief.
Happy summer.
You too.
You belong somewhere else, doing something much more summary than this. So you each got a brief that I sent to you, and I also sent you late tonight a confidential brief as well, on just on some adjudicated major cases that have recently finished in the Superior Court, the Commonwealth, that were Milton cases.
Okay.
As well as a couple of updates to two major ongoing cases that are currently before the Superior Court at this time. And if you have any questions on any of them, feel free to. One of them you may, because of that one, it involved the Milton Public Schools. There was a major Superior Court case with about a 2-year white-collar case. That case ended last week, and there was significant money involved in that case. So if you have any questions on that, please feel free to contact me, and I'll gladly discuss it privately with each of you.
Okay, sure.
So just breaking down by category, under personnel, Cadet Joe Marinelli, who you, this board appointed earlier, he's completed all of his 911 related training, and he's already begun his shadowing portion of his integration into the 911 system as a 911 operator and as a police cadet, and we believe he will be fully integrated very quickly and on his own by the end of summer. We do have a vacant police position. We just were notified that Boston Police will run on December 14th, and next week we'll start the process with Anne Marie to request a list from HRD for that position. As far as crime data, I have some good news. Residential and vehicular offenses, they always remain car beatings remain a priority for us. In the first 6 months of 2015, we've seen a 43% reduction in house breaks, which is pretty good. We had a very productive meeting last night with the residents of Willoughby Road. We've had, and I attached a separate brief just on this series of crimes. We had a carjacking in Willoughby, followed by 2 robberies off of Elliott Street in a 3-day period. Boston, particularly in Mattapan and Rosendale, as well as Brookline, also had similar offenses. We believe that they're all connected. It's the same individuals. Crimes like this we don't really see a lot anymore. 20 years ago we saw street robberies in this town. We don't. One of the things we talked a lot about is the risk versus the reward. That there really isn't a lot that you can even get out of this. The one thing we do think in the Milton, the first one from Willoughby Road where they got the woman's car, was he wanted to keep it. It was actually recovered in a tag and tow operation, not as a result of like the investigation. We got a little bit of lucky there. They were tagging and towing to do street cleaning in Mattapan, and he had already changed. It had New Hampshire plates. He had put on Massachusetts plates, and in that process, we got the car back. We were able to process it. As in the real world, which is not the 90-minute or 60-minute CSI world, hopefully we get some forensics that matches between all these different cars. So that's a very active and ongoing case, and the whole timeline and everything is broken down. I've given that all to you in tonight's email. As I said, this is good news, but we remain very diligent with this. Narcotic arrests and opiate heroin use, everyone from the governor to the attorney general, you hear this every day. I can't thank DA Morrissey enough. He's been a great partner in this. As of June 1st, there were 36 overdoses in Norfolk County alone, including one here. This is more than just an arrest incarceration issue. This is a public health issue. It's a regional issue. It's a statewide issue. But we are not immune to this. Probably all of us in this room know someone in this town whose kid has gotten addicted to heroin, and once they put that needle in their arm, their life is altered for a long time, if not forever. The difficulty now is that the heroin is laced with some serious other mixed drugs, things that they mix into ingredients, if I would say, and some of them make it much more powerful, much more easier for them to die. One of the things I really want to give DA Morrissey credit for is he's taken a pharmacist on staff. In a recent meeting that I attended where he broke down these 36 cases, the pharmacist broke down what prescriptions each victim was on, where they came from, what pharmacy they were purchased, and I can send this to you if you want it, what pharmacy it can be sent to, who was purchased for. It's kind of amazing. One pharmacy jumps out as the #1 as far as issuing scripts, yeah, big corporate pharmacy. And is amazing what the victims of the overdoses had on board legally, prescribed by doctors, as well as the heroin they were using, and that contributes to their death. So it's really something important. He's really taking this very aggressively to the corporate pharmacies. We've already, Deputy Chief King has already brought this DA's pharmacist to our CVS in Milton to meet with their pharmacists and say, look at this. Because some of the cases that were presented, not here, but there were a couple cases where addicts actually overdosed and lost consciousness waiting in line to get scripts filled in a drugstore. And so it just kind of shows you to say, this is pretty serious and this isn't going to go away. In this area, one thing that John and I have, Deputy King and I have talked about with the DA, and the DEA is very eager to reformulate a partnership that we had here, and Mr. Burns and I talked about this when we met privately, is to reform that partnership and bring the local police departments in with them to work on this issue, because this isn't going to go away. This is going to take some time to, it's gotten into really good households and good families, and we have to work on this collectively to deal with it, and to kind of do that, and I've outlined all that too. Domestic violence, it still remains a very big thing for us. I did give you a breakdown on Kathleen O'Conti, who's our DV advocate funded by Dove. She's only been here for a few months, and she's already worked 75 cases, that's a lot of cases to work. She's worked 75 cases already, and even when I met with her the other day, I said, so how many, and she gave me the number, I'm like, wow. But I think I said this to you, and if you saw one of our Facebook posts, this is something we've been doing for a while, is people do Craigslist purchases. They make them in the front lawn. So now we've actually openly advertised it and invited you to, like, look at if you're nervous. And it came to light, one of the ways it came to light was when they're paving Highland Street. 2 people called. I have a Craigslist transaction I'm going to do today. How am I going to get in? Because the street's closed. And we had them do it in the church parking lot here, next door. But every weekend there are exchanges between families, and most people don't even realize that. And when you sit up and look out the window and you see them, and from our perspective, we realize what's taking place, domestic violence remains very high on our priority list. BI Deaconess Milton, and we had talked, this issue here we had talked about a little bit, and this is just as we had expected. Closing Quincy was going to have a dramatic effect on the ER there. I want to thank Cindy Page, their Vice President, and Rob Atkinson, the Director of Security. They've been very proactive in this. John King and I just met with them again 2 weeks ago. They've gone out and constructed a brand new secure facility within the ED that opens this week. I got to tour it last week. It's exactly what they need, because one of the bigger issues for us, it's not just the people that are coming there that are causing us to be there more and more often. It's just not conducive to being secure and safe, not just for us, but more importantly for their staff, because they're the ones that have to work there. If you just Google assaults on emergency room staff in hospitals, in this, it's unbelievable. So I'm very happy to report on that, and they've done a great job with that. Parking and traffic enforcement, it's ongoing, it continues all the time. I am hopeful, I do hope that the East Milton thing gets on track and because you can just, and I've walked it almost every day now, you can just, it needs to be uplifted. Everything from repaved, re-signs, upgraded lighting. I did the walk to school for the Collycott Cunningham parents on the week before school got out. I didn't like the way they were going. Some of the changes we're going to make on school patterns. One's going to be for people traveling from that Granite Place, Franklin Street side to Collycott Cunningham. We're going to actually move the crossing guard from where she used to stand in front of the old drugstore there across to the other side. It's going to take some work to kind of get this, but if we can get this moving, we really could enhance the quality of life for the people that live in that neighborhood. So I'm hopeful of that. But we'll remain on that. We've kept mountain bikes nights and evenings all summer long, and we will continue to run that periodically. Not periodically, indefinitely.
Yeah, everybody likes it. They really do.
Okay. Public workplace, school violence, safety, and training. As you know, with the help of this board, we've done a lot with the schools. We just completed doing this with the library staff. And Sarge Richard and Anne Marie are working together to bring that training here. And we have to look no farther than Chattanooga last week. unfortunately, these things happen all the time. But we've really been a leader in this, school-wise, and community-wise, so it only makes sense to bring it here. I know Anne Marie's bringing a plan to you on a way that we can do it.
Right.
And I think it's probably something that we'll come back and do every couple of years, because these are perishable skills, and as we saw once again in Chattanooga, the carnage and death that results in some of these, if you don't prepare for it, you don't want to be standing going, oh my God. So we're going to do that forthwith very quickly. In-service training, I won't break it down, but as you can see from the breakdown that I gave you, I won't go through them all, and I want to thank Deputy Chief King and Lieutenant Alvin. We did a lot this year, particularly on contemporary issues and everything from bringing in MCAD, management of aggressive behavior, because we see so much. It's very difficult in policing right now in this country, and people are always talking about when to use force, how to use force. Well, we go to the range all the time. We talk about use of, but Moab is a big thing in the country, and we were able to bring our own instructor trainer, certified detective Pires as an instructor, and he came in and trained the whole force in it. Suicide prevention, all those things are ongoing. Community meetings, and you were at one, Mr. Hurley, we've had series, including even last night. We have National Night Out in 2 weeks on August 5th, which brings a good couple of thousand people, which is really a night for us all to celebrate the good things about here. One of the things I said, Deborah Felton hosted last night's meeting, if you sat in her backyard, which was packed, it's really amazing. You would have no idea that 500 yards away is one of the busiest policing districts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Like, it's incredible that we have that quality of life there, and a lot of it is the men and women who work here, but it's also the people who step up. And I talked about two former residents of this town. One might still be a resident, who I first met in 1987, Richard Ring and Bonnie Joyce Halsey, who started Columbine Coast Neighborhood, which was the first neighborhood group in this town, and how much it's grown and taken off, and how much these people, you'll never find apathy here. I've never once gone to a community meeting where we have to look for people. They come out, just as we saw in the Central Lab meeting. Well, the traffic always brings people, but people come to the meetings. They care about the community. They want to know what they can do to help, and that's a credit to all of them, and I thank them for that. Our summer day camps were finished the first week, and I want to thank the Copeland Foundation for sponsoring this once again. Over 150 kids we take off the street. We get them, they're in that idle, that they're too old to be with mom and dad all day, but they're too young to work, and then they're in that where they need something to do, and it sells out every year. I wish we could do more. But week 2 is coming up in 2 weeks, and I'm really grateful to Chris Potts and Maria Poles for coordinating that each year. The new one is one we've talked about, is a hunting update, and this is a big one. I haven't talked to this publicly yet, and I'm going to. Lyme disease is an issue in this community. It's the entire impetus for hunting to come into Milton, and this has been proposed by the DCR to create zones this year for the next 4 years for both bow and shotgun hunting within the town of Milton, perhaps a little bit of Hyde Park and some of Canton.
Outside of the reservation?
No, this is all on the
On the
reservation,
reservation, okay.
all on the reservation, because the reservation does touch all of us, Randolph, Milton, Canton, and Hyde Park. We'll be the biggest part, we're the biggest part. As I noted, this is unique because the Blue Hills Reservation is a passive, it's not Miles Standish, it's exclusively passive. Biking, hiking, swimming, fishing and holding. But it's inundated with deer, and the biologists are the ones who are saying to us that the Lyme disease in this town is just way too high. And if they don't thin these herds, then it's going to be even worse, and Lyme disease can be fatal. And I believe I've already been made aware, just in the search that we had for the gentleman who took his life, which was that whole Foul Meadow area, we already know of 3 cases of people who contracted Lyme disease from tick bites that they didn't even know they had that week, just all searches. And you see, just the soccer field there. That soccer field just at one place is loaded every day with kids. Go there at 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, it's got deer.
Yep.
The field in the back of Houghton's, and the only predator is a car. When they get hit by a car, I actually had thought that this winter would be much worse, but it didn't take the numbers they thought it might. So This is going, we're waiting to see what they create for zones. They haven't given us what they think. They heard our input, all the law enforcement input, you know, what our concerns were, but it is going to happen this year on their reservation.
Now, we had asked a couple of years ago at a meeting to follow up, because we haven't had a request in a couple of years, but we were regularly getting them for people wanting to.
This may
Funds.
help that, because this is going to be much bigger than anything we could have granted.
Right.
So I think that we do see regularly now on private property in town, particularly Holland,
Sure.
Green,
Right.
Brush Hill, a little bit of an eclipse, people who have enough land that allow bow hunting, Randolph Ave.
Right. But on
I
town
was-
property, it's not.
Yeah, there's really very few places on a private property, Milton, maybe like Bartels might be big enough, where you could maybe be far enough away from a dwelling on the road to be able to shotgun hunt, but I have not seen the zones. I don't know what zones they're going to suggest yet. This is a kind of a dilemma for them as well, because this is they know, this is their passive, this has been, but they know they have to do this. So, so I will be back to you before October, I imagine, because that's when bow hunts, bow season
Yeah, I know
starts.
Commissioner Beaton is really gung-ho on it. I had a conversation with, actually about the skating rink, but it kind of,
Right.
as we talked about that, he kind of started talking about the Blue Hills and the deer, and
Yeah.
Now, is it accurate that it's 90 deer per square mile?
That's what they're telling us. Well, if you,
'Cause that's a lot.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like 5 times the size. It's,
Yeah.
if you were to go like the back of Houghton's right now, the sun's going down that ball field, we over a dozen. I mean, we get like 5 or 6 in the morning on the front lawn of the police station. They just walk across out of the woods. Brookwood Farm loaded on.
Seen quite a few at Turner's Pond.
Yeah, there you go. You turn us upon the cemetery?
Yep.
Cemetery? So,
backyard.
we may have, we'll see how this, but they've said 4 years, minimum. 4 years, both shotgun and bow, to thin it.
Obviously, there'll have to be a lot of notification,
Oh, yeah.
outreach,
Oh,
and
God, yeah.
public notice about this. Are they starting to put forward a plan for that? DCR, not you, DCR, do you know, are they
I have not seen it.
involving you or other town departments?
All we got was like here's
Communication
what we're
plans?
thinking of, but they will, I'm sure they will. I
So
don't
it's a
see them.
regionalized plan?
Oh, God, yeah. This is,
okay.
they're taking the lead in this. I would say this is DCR with DPH, you know, the DPH.
Yeah.
you know, Epidemiologist, are they epidemiologists that would, they're the ones who've taken the concern about, it's truly public health driven, not sport driven or anything like that. It's clearly on the Lyme disease. So that I expect to be here, and I will keep you abreast as soon as I get
Okay.
anything on it. This is
Thank you.
just the first introductory meeting, and that's why I included in this, because as you know, this has been. Infrastructure and facility enhancements, we've done a lot, but one thing I do want to talk is, there've been many case decisions about the importance of having a contemporary interview room, something similar to this, but very less elaborate, just desk chairs with in-camera videos. So you walk in, and from the second you go in to the second you leave, you're on camera, and it no longer is an investigator or an officer allowed to just go and like, tell me your story. Everything is done on tape, recorded. So with the gift that this board approved, the $10,000 gift from the $10,000 gift from the Fladley Foundation, we completed and opened that interview room last Monday. So I'm pleased to report that. So with that, that's the only last thing I want to talk about is I had there was a commendation that I sent to you relative to the work of several officers on the night of the shooting that took place at the Milton Hill House. And I will publish that public commendation tonight on Officers Tim Doyle, Ron Purcell, and Cadet Mike Lynch. Great job they did that night. There was it was a unique, came in as a medical call, and buildings like this full on, well, we go all the time, and Cadet Lynch, as I noted, as I paraphrased from what Lieutenant O'Neill wrote in the report, just had the feeling it was something more than just a medical call, and sent extra cars, and sure enough, they walked right into a pretty vicious crime scene, and thankfully no one lost their life. So I really want to give some credit to those officers for a great job that they did in that. And that's it, unless you have any questions.
No, I want to thank you for following up on the regionalized drug enforcement. I think that's something that
Very
we should,
important.
very important. I think that, there's a lot of stuff going on out there, and I think that it's important we do that. And then just one other thing, and I commend you for continuing to use those bike patrols. As you know, I've talked to a lot of residents, and the foot patrols somewhere in the business districts would be greatly appreciated. And I know that, staffing does become an issue. You've got people who go to court. You've got, 5 or 6 patrols out there. So I am cognizant of that. But I think at some point in time, maybe we could start to look at
What if,
accommodating
so as I said when we met, I wanted to get through this vacation period, and the square actually gets busier in September, so I'd like to look at having a walking officer ready at least a couple days a week to go towards East Milton Square, at least on days, and then we can look maybe at weekend nights, and then maybe evolve something into the Central Ave Business District as it hopefully finishes completion. Because there's no doubt here, and I said this off on a side note in the last night's meeting, and just the square and Central Ave Business have changed so much for the better. I mean, they really have. The square is truly a destination place now, but it does cause pressure and pushback, and I agree we want to be on top of it. So even if it's just weekend nights and certain weekdays that we can do, Saturday's a main day, a big day for us. Like Saturday right now gets a mountain bike almost every day, every Saturday, because personalized fitness draws big, and that puts so much demand around the square. And I don't like to say we'll be tough with tagging, but tagging is part of what we have to do, because you've got to keep things moving. You've got to prevent gridlock and congestion, and you're correct. Walking and mountain bike officers, those two. The reason we prefer the mountain bike a little bit more than a walking is because they can move faster. They just can get on that bike and they can just move around the square so fast. If they had to run, it might be the other ones would be good, but they just can move so fast, and that's why we opted to go that way first. But I give you my word that we will maintain that presence and continue our commitment there. And I only see it having to grow in Central Ave. As I said, Central Ave continues to change. And as I say, from when I first went back, I am committed to keeping as much effort as we can on that square, because the square is the hub of the school. It's the main commercial hub of this community. So
I think it's a real good benefit, for a lot of people, whether they're business owners, whether they're residents with young kids, whether they're teenagers getting to know the police officers. I think there's a lot of
really is
upside in
good.
it. So.
it's true, and that's like the deer camps. Part of the reason we run the deer camp is that we would much rather have the interactions positive, because one day, we all know, there's going to be a negative one, but if you've built that positive foundation, that negative one may turn out being there. And I think most of the parents in this town know that too, and that's pretty much a good thing. But we'll keep that going. We'll stay on that. And I'll do everything I can to expand that as fast as possible. I did email Mr. Kring today, and I've had a great meeting with Tim. Your assistant planner has done a great job on the parking issue that he's working on for us. So
That's being resolved.
we're working on that. I'm going to come back to you with he's actually going to meet with Anne Marie, I think, next week. And
Good.
he's done a great job with us. He really has. So it's not an easy thing, and he's done some great research, so we'll see what happens. Okay?
I did have one quick question, and it kind of has to do with what you're talking about, the diversity and discrimination training and everything. And given all that transpired this past year in Baltimore and other places, there's been a lot of talk about dash cams, body cams.
A salesman called me today.
Not that necessarily Milton is a kind of place that might occur, but have you got any thought or?
I have. But I think my first thought is exactly what your thought is you think of all the work that you put into trying to build the trust with the community. Do you want to have to get a camera? Do you want to? It's still very limited in the country, anyway, like Seattle, only a few places. NYPD is just starting. It'll be interesting. We've never had dash cams. We've never had a need for them, yet we video everything on our property. So from like the second you come on to the police station parking lot, coming in, you're on videotape. We don't audio, we just videotape it for our own security for you. And I don't know what's going to happen. There could be legislation, as there was just, I think, there's South Carolina has passed legislation. I would say the trust issue is definitely an issue in America, which is sad, because the reality is that cops just do so much to save life every day in so many different ways, but yet you watch one incident like the one where the officer was indicted for murder for shooting that guy, like in my mind as a chief, I can't envision that a cop could even think like that, like would even be that callous, but human beings are subject to human frailty, and the public wants to trust their police department. So if we start to go that way, this will definitely be something we'll come back and talk about. But is it on my mind? Obviously, anything, as I said, it's not easy to be in policing today. But
Right.
fortunately, we live in a community where we have great residents and great men and women who police it. You know, can they trip and fall and make mistakes? Yes. But 99.9% of the time, they do a great job for you.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are you going to stick around for the
Yes.
I'll take a back
I'm
seat.
going to bring a tea.
all right. Is that next?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that next?
That is next,
so you
yes.
can-
So discussion of the new traffic pattern around Town Hall. Guys,
Bill? Jack?
I guess it'd be us, huh?
Yes.
Yeah,
Actually, mostly you.
yeah, we'll talk about, it, yeah. Yeah, so, how you doing? Thank you for having us. So I'm gonna, I guess I'll be speaking on behalf of our core team that we, so, probably about a year ago, I think Anne Marie and I spoke about the situation around Town Hall in the traffic with the daycare centers and the fire trucks going back and forth. And we just, and since I transferred over here a few years ago back from the schools, I said, this is an accident waiting to happen. I mean, basically, so I brought Anne Marie, I said, can we do something about the traffic? And so I kind of look at it not as a traffic plan, but as a safety plan. Because it's really, obviously the traffic can be affected, but this, the way the kids, from the daycare center running across the street, the buses picking up kids, dropping off kids, the fire trucks going back and forth, senior citizens parking, everyone doing their business, it's just, so we had to come up with a better idea, so we kind of kicked the can around for maybe 6 months and come up with different ideas, so we finally, and even as of last week, we even kicked the can another time around to come up with a better plan, I think, and so, I don't know, I think everybody had a copy, but pretty much so the pattern, what would happen is that you come in from Canton Ave over here as a one-way, and you can come in and get some parking over here on your right side. If there's no parking there, you could circle around the building, for parking in the front. We're trying to hopefully, and we'll get a letter out, all staff will be parking in the rear parking lot, so that will free up a lot of the visitor parking there, and some parking here, and move all the handicap spots. There's one over here, there's two over there, move them all over there. As you can see, we put the new handicap ramp, all the mail and the posters will all be moved over here. So I think it'd be a real nice plan. We work with the chiefs and Jack and make sure that the traffic pattern would work for the fire department. So that's pretty much the plan. Obviously, we've had, I personally have some, being in town hall, when people come out, some people don't like the plan, they think it's, obviously inconvenient. I constantly explain, it's a safety plan. It's really, and I really think this plan is going to be so much easier for for people parking, for all the visitors, for handicap accessibility. And
so all the handicap is going to be over on this side?
Right. Yeah, roughly 3 spots we're going to have. I mean,
I just have one, I don't know if it's a question or a comment. The way that you have the one-way set up coming off of Canton concerns me just a little bit in that the one-way coming in is over on this side, which gives traffic a straight shot out back to Walnut Street. And that's where, I know coming the other way, that traffic gets up a head of steam coming through there, especially because they're trying to beat lights. So they're coming they're coming fast out of there. If you were to reverse those two and make one way that way going out and this way, it would seem to calm traffic in that you'd have to come in this way and you would have to take a turn, so you'd have to be going slower to kind of get around. Any
You'd
thoughts?
be very surprised that they're going slower. Bill's timeline is dead on. It was basically, he had it in place when he brought it to me, and it was about a year ago, and asked me if I had ever thought about it, and I thought about it every day. It was one of those things in my head where I kind of thought it goes hand in hand with a new building, but I said, Bill said, why wait? And absolutely, one of the big problems we have is traffic coming in this way, cutting across, taking a left, coming the other way, coming this way, cutting across and coming up. And same thing with Engine Road. These aren't roads.
Right, the
And
driveway,
people
right.
understand they're not roads. And there's no sense of where they're at when they're there. This will be a slight exaggeration, but just a slight exaggeration. I personally almost get in an accident coming out of the parking space here once a week. And my deputy chief said the same thing. So I echo completely what Bill says. It will be a slight, inconvenience, but it is a big safety measure. And if we have to do something down the end at Walnut Street, it would be worse for us if we reverse this. And another factor with that is I would have to run some tests just by the way the station is situated. It's going to be easier for our guys to make the swing and come out by bearing right and leaving the town hall on their left-hand side than it would be to go the other way.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, that's why we developed it this way.
Yeah.
It's
Because
easier
you
for
were
the fire.
concerned. The fire trucks come out.
Yeah.
This is their pathway out. It's
Especially the
much,
ladder truck. The
easier
engine
turn.
is shorter based. It can, but even so, it's easier for both. And I'm not sure possible on the ladder to go the other way, but we could run those tests. But
Okay.
like I say,
That's
most of
my
the
only concern,
issues-
especially where you have all the handicaps
Well-
over that side, and you've got a straight shot coming in from that
Yeah.
side.
I just want to comment on I had your thought as well, but from a traffic commission, because this is not a public way, this is a.
Right.
We're getting most of from the Magnolia Walnut because the PM pressure, trying to get away from this main light here. So
That's
they'll
right, yeah.
try to, so this defeats that, because this no longer, this is going to be one way. So you
Right, so you
can't
can't-
cut
you-
through
you
here in
can't
the
cut-
afternoon
right.
anymore
Mhm.
to defeat the light at Library Corner, which
Right.
I think is a good thing, because the PM commute, that pressure out of the city every day from coming up Central, coming up Brook is just so, and this is a big, and this will help defeat that.
Right, right.
But I thought the same way you
Yeah.
did in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one thing I also looked at, too, after working with the chief, is looked at where people parking the car, trying to drop off mail, they're handicapped in a wheelchair, and it's like, it's so much better to put on this light, and then the fire truck's coming down, and somebody's parked there in the middle of, it's just, I mean, it's really a tight space, but this is hopefully gonna work for safety-wise. Somewhere down the line, we talk about a new fire station, or trying to redesign the space, but I just said to myself, something's gotta be done now, you can't wait. I mean, it's just too dangerous. You see the little kids running, across the road, it's scary.
Yeah, no, like I said, that's,
Now, Jack, I can see that if you went with my plan, because I wouldn't change, the one way I keep the same as you're going out to Walnut Street, the only one way is I'd reverse the other two, but it would force the fire truck to come around the front of Town Hall and to come out, and that would be
Yeah.
tough turns, yeah.
That new ladder truck is one big truck.
Yeah, that's a good point.
and they're not making trucks smaller.
No,
They just
they're not,
aren't.
no.
The next generation will be bigger.
But I do think we might have to monitor the Walnut Street, because what you raised, Tom, I hadn't thought of, but there is a fair amount of traffic, including me, coming down Canton Ave towards the library.
If you want to close that
And
off altogether,
the way to avoid, and you
utilize
often,
it.
there often is a backup at that light, so
People shoot
coming
through.
that way, people might want to cut through to beat the light. I think you were thinking traffic, or some of you were thinking traffic coming the other way to beat the light. In the
In the
evening, you would
morning-
have,
in
in
the
the
morning,
morning,
you
you'd
get
have
traffic
that.
coming that
In
way.
the evening, you'd have it the other way around.
Right.
So in the evening, we might have a problem with traffic cutting through. That might be something to monitor as we go forward, and whether it should
It could have to be tweaked. I mean,
be
we'll
tweaked
we'll
at some
figure-
point.
we'll
But
Now, like I say, I only half joked there. We
Yeah.
would use that as training area if you want to burn that off and close it, and that would eliminate a huge problem,
Yeah, I think we, and
but get you more complaints, I'm sure.
yeah, we have to do a lot of signage, we have to do some signage there for keeping people slow, and hopefully, if it does, obviously we have a bottleneck, then we have to look at it again and say, what's the best way of, getting people to stop?
Well, like everybody said, it's not a roadway, so bottleneck or not.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
like it, don't use it.
But, yeah.
But the chief, once it is implemented, the chief is committed to beginning to monitor it, to make sure that we don't have people going too fast.
You mean us?
Yep,
Yes.
yes, yeah.
And one of the things in this, we've seen this at so many different churches in town. The churches collectively have tried to find ways to make money, and daycares is one of their, as we see it here. Over in East Milton, the church, UCC over there by Jack Rabbit, I mean, they run a big, but they have no parking. They don't even have one space.
Right.
And it'd be one thing if you didn't have any of that during the day. but you've got that. I mean, right now, it's 2 churches in there, so it's Saturday and Sunday. They have their high holiday. I know eventually that's gonna change too, but it definitely is a lot safer here. And once people, if we do it collectively and really get it out and people come to understand it, I think it'll be accepted pretty easily.
Yep. I'm fine
So
with
what
it.
is the target, assuming we approve it tonight, what's the target plan for implementing this? What the date? What's the date? Are we talking August, or it says end of July. When will signage be going up? When will this be official?
Yeah, maybe Joe can probably speak more on that, but, I know it's all trying to work together, and I know
I think
some...
Joe is waiting for the implementation to be approved.
Signs have been ordered and have been delivered, from 2 to 3 weeks to actually get it installed, a little bit longer, because we want to supplement this with ground painting along the driveway itself. And it'll be later in the season.
So probably August, before it's all in place. Well, I think it's a well-thought-out plan. I know it's been percolating for quite a while, and
Yep.
some residents made some good comments that resulted in the change in front of Town Hall. So it seems like a reasonable plan to me, and something we should give a try.
I think so.
Happy with it as well.
Have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation to redirect the traffic pattern around Town Hall to increase the safety of motorists and pedestrians.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay, item 11 on the agenda is the discussion of the Green Communities Grant.
That's me, yeah, that's me.
Didn't have to move, Bill.
Yeah.
Bill and Bill show.
It's money.
So basically, obviously, in 2010, we became, Milton became a green community. We worked, we did some, back in 2010, 11, we received a grant for $154,000 when we did some wind turbine stuff, did a lot of improvements around. We also, that's when Bill called us the green team, when we founded, we working on all the energy audits, and over the years, we kept applying for, all the audits. And this past year, actually last year, we just missed it because we had to come up with a vehicle policy. And the paperwork with Green Communities, it's pretty time-consuming paperwork. And our green team was like, actually Emily kind of joined the team to do a lot of the paperwork. Diane, myself, Bill, Jay, and Henry McLean, who's an architect. We missed that, and we were, as a team, very frustrated because we probably spent 120 hours of our time applying for these grants, but we missed it. So we finally got the school department to agree to vehicle policy. The selectmen agreed to it. This year we submitted that, and we applied for all the grants again, and we finally were awarded $244,000 in green money. And then to back that up, the whole total project is about $340,000. So there's incentive money out there with utilities, with the gas company, electric company, so we applied for that. We had a meeting today. They've already approved another $30,000, and based on the conversation today, I think they're going to fund us 100% to do the $340,000 project. That's no cost to town of Milton.
Great.
Great.
I mean, it's no amount of money. Yeah.
What is the plan for the project?
Well, once we sign the contracts, we're hoping to maybe get the project started by the end of the summer, because obviously a lot of the supplies have to be ordered. A lot of the biggest part of the project is pretty much the outside lighting. All the schools and the public library will all have all the lighting all changed out to LEDs. So but they said it might take 6 weeks to order some of the, all the equipment. And then there's a lot of work inside the buildings. But, so it's, and then we have some refrigerator work at some of the schools. And then once all the projects are done, for the next 7 years, they estimate to be about $60,000 savings on the electricity. So that's enormous, yeah.
For a year.
I mean, so we're fairly excited. I mean, timeframe is always tough trying to work around schools, but you say if you can get the money, take it, and we'll work around everyone if we have to. I mean,
Good.
Very good, yeah.
Great news.
so I think the proposal that we actually, Emily, I don't know if you, we're trying to get somebody to be able
Yes,
to
they
sign
have a
off.
motion.
Okay.
They have a
okay,
motion.
Okay, yeah.
Yep, okay, so I'll make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign and execute the Green Communities Grant Contract, pertinent documents on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great job, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. I have one more, look at that, huh? All these committees.
I assume everybody else out there is here for the next item on the agenda,
Yes.
which is the update on the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee. So I don't know if you all want to come up. If you do, we'll get real cozy up here, or you just want to send a couple people up. Hey, Tim. Reese. Why don't you just all state your name so everybody looking.
My name is Alyssa Cook. I'm the president of the Milton Animal League.
Therese Desmond, I'm on the committee for the animal shelter.
The co-chair of the committee.
Co-chair.
I'm Tim Serwinski. I'm the staff support person for the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee.
Kathy Henderson, secretary of the Animal Advisory Committee.
And Bill Ritchie, consolidated facilities director.
Okay.
Update us.
We've all had a chance to review the letter that we
I
sent
did.
to you. We did. Okay, and the committee has kind of summarized the work that they've done up to now and have tried to keep with the deadline of early August in order to select a site for the building of the animal shelter. All of the alternate areas that we looked at just were too problematical, and the only issues that we could see with the area off of the old landfill road is that there's a lot of changes of grade, and it's pretty expensive to develop, but it's free and clear as far as it's a town-owned land, and that the wetlands are not impacting it. The neighborhood agrees to the location there as far as we know, and I think the location on that particular parcel is something that would not interfere with either the Quarry Hills Golf Course and their users or the neighborhood of Quarry Lane.
Have you had a chance to look at this map? I gave it to Emily last
It's
week.
a little hard to see it online.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's if you're familiar with the site, it's this sort of rhombus-shaped parcel on this. I guess it's the west side of the dump access road across from the golf course. The town owns it. The town owns the small triangular parcel kind of beneath it, and the committee chose this corner. Like Therese just said. It's owned by the town. It was recently rezoned for municipal use, so there's no issues there. And the topography of this is tough to see because it's an aerial map, but right across the road from this site is sort of a big hill of the golf course. So of any piece of land on this parcel, it's the furthest away from any sort of visual sort of disruption for the golf course. It's farthest away from Quarry Lane. And one of the things that the committee felt was, people coming up that access road, instead of going all the way to the end, you're really only hitting, the first corner of it, so you don't have a lot of traffic going back and forth as a disruption to the golf course. So as the design process goes on, we're going to engage, the committee is going to engage with Quarry Hills just to make sure that they have some input and some awareness of what the committee is thinking, should the site be approved, that is.
Personally, I think it's an excellent site. I think it's going to give you plenty of room to walk the dogs. It's a nice area. It's got great access, I think. So as far as I'm concerned, it's ideal.
Tim, are we confident that the issue with the Native American artifacts is not near this parcel, right? It's further up near the Lyman Road area, further up the road, the access road. Is that correct?
Boy.
It was the other way, I think.
It's
wasn't
up,
it?
when you
Yeah,
get the
it's,
access road.
I have another map of the,
But what I guess I mean is it's beyond this. So here's the parcel we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's up this area, going
Yes.
towards Lyman, yeah.
so do you have a?
There are no, the Native American artifacts, if you go to, they gave you this plan?
Yes.
Okay. If you go to that plan, the Native American artifacts would be down here in the bottom, probably just past the middle, that area there, going southwest. is where the Indian artifacts would be, not anywhere up in that area.
Okay, so there's none up here, there's no
There's none
question?
up there.
Okay.
No.
All right.
That is an old quarry area. If you take and walk in that whole area, you'll find lots of small pockets that work for the quarries. You'll see the iron, there's chains out there, there's chain falls, there are places where they used to have a boom and a mast. There's lots of steel anchors down into the rocks so they could pick up pieces of granite and take them out of those quarry holes. There are a couple of quarry holes on this site. There's actually one right beside the choice location. There's another one right up on the top of the property line with the last house on Quarry Lane. There's a hole right there. And then there's another quarry hole over on the O'Neill property, which part of that subdivision.
How deep are those holes?
We're not talking tall, we're talking up to here.
Okay.
There's enough that some of them have held water over time, like the one on the O'Neill property. The one that is in the town's, on the town's parcel, the water is literally about that much, about that deep. The drainage up there, you'll see that they look like swales, but it's more, they cut the stone out so that the land, there's a lot of cut up in the ledge itself. And to put the building in, they'll do more filling than they will cutting.
And we've engaged with a wetland specialist who's taken a look, and we'll be ready to go before the Conservation Commission with the,
I have,
a plan.
right, I've already had the wetland consultant out there. She's flagged the wetlands on site. I spoke with the engineer at the end of last week. They're supposed to come out and do the flagging so that we can go to Concom, and we're hoping for the August meeting. Depends when I can get the engineer there.
So one of the other questions is, on page 2 of the report, there's just a note here that the notable drawback is that the site may be expensive to develop due to rock outcroppings, changes of grade, and the forested state. The committee would like to clarify what assistance the town can provide regarding site preparation. So I don't know if there have been any further discussions between the committee and either the town planner or the town administrator about that, or Tim, any thoughts on that?
That's something, now that we're sort of beyond the site selection phase and sort of moving into eventually come up with an RFQ for design services and, moving into, funding the project. The committee's going to have some more detailed discussions with the Animal League about, how this is going to be funded, setting up an account with the town to sort of, accept gifts, doing a sort of a more detailed cost estimate. So the MOU between the town and the Animal League is it's relatively clear, but it's not super clear. But that's just something, tonight I don't think we're necessarily ready to say, this is what needs to be paid for at this point by this, person, but just sort of moving forward, figuring out.
Once we take once the engineer comes out to the site, puts the wetlands onto the site plan, now we actually have something we could go to a contractor and say, here's my plan, I'm looking to take and put a building in this particular area. We can move it around a little bit. Please help us with, and we can do that part after we have a site plan. But I need a plan that we can actually go to them with.
And I guess my other question was, for the wetlands, it looks like it says the town commissioned wetland strategies to conduct the wetland analysis. Do we have any sense of what the cost of that is, or what?
$700.
Okay, so it's pretty minimal. Okay.
It was a good deal.
Well, I agree with Tom that this is a site that's been looked at for a long time for this project, and it's probably, out of the sites that we have, it's probably the best choice because it doesn't present the challenges that, obviously, your report notes that the current location, the Governor Stoughton property, would require the AG process to be pursued again, and that could create some delays. So I would support.
I like the location as well, and hope that everything works out very well for you guys.
The committee's been doing a lot of hard work. It's a really good group, so you should have a lot of confidence in this process going forward.
So I'll move that we approve the request of the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee to locate the new animal shelter on parcels I-38D 8-9, located off the former landfill access road.
And I'll second that.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for all your work.
Okay, item 13 on the agenda. Actually, let me give people a chance to clear out. Okay. Item 13 on the agenda is a discussion of the wind turbine project. Basically, as we all know, the wind turbine project was a project that was started many years ago and got involved in a lot of litigation. We had won most of the litigation. Actually, we won all of the litigation. The only thing that we did not win, didn't lose, was an arbitrator's decision because it was a leasehold within the lease between Quarry Hills and the town of Milton. Was a binding arbitration clause. So there was an arbiter that came in to determine was there a violation of the leasehold, and he basically played Solomon and said you can build it, but you can't run it when they're golfing. And it's kind of made the project not very feasible any longer. Just to clear up one thing, because there was a newspaper article that has caused some confusion. There was a bond authorization for about $6.2 million. We never borrowed $6.2 million. All we had was an authorization. We borrowed about $1.3 million, and of that, we have $60,000 left over that we have not spent. We had borrowed something in anticipation of bills coming in, and then when the project was kind of halted, those bills didn't come in. So all we're sitting on in terms of cash, of usable cash, is $360,000. So the, I guess we have this on our agenda to determine if we want to basically abandon this project, which is the first step towards thinking about trying to repurpose that money for some other use. But what we're repurposing is not the bond authorization, only the $360,000. The rest of the bond authorization will
Be rescinded.
rescinded, right? And we'll probably do that in the October town meeting. So.
Okay, so I'm going to propose a motion to approve abandoning the town's wind turbine project.
Second.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just to point out that abandoning this project doesn't mean that there couldn't be other energy efficiency projects that we can look into. I mean,
Sure.
So I think our effort, when we talked last meeting, we
Solar.
talked about trying to have the Energy Committee at least give some thought to what other things might we want to consider exploring. So I think we should just mention that those can all keep going forward. This, by abandoning this project, that doesn't mean that we won't look into other projects that might also produce some benefits.
Perhaps, yeah.
I think an example of what you're talking about is the green community stuff that we just got for $244,000. 15 different projects around town, and those are the ones that we worked on that we knew we could get payback in less than 3 years. It didn't mean that those are the only ones we're looking at. We're looking at a whole slew of others that we can then take and still pursue. So it's still a top priority.
Right. The complication is, though, is you'd have to look at a project that had a similar useful life, either the same or longer as
You
the
need to be able to
turbine.
bond it for the
Well,
same
in order to use
period
those,
of time.
that
To repurpose
authorization
that
of those
money,
funds.
yes.
The remainder of
But I'm not even talking about that, I'm just talking about in
Other
general. about
projects, yeah.
Other solar
Sure.
projects or other
Energy projects.
And we continue to pursue
projects.
those, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, item 14 is a DPW Mass DEP Sustainable Materials Recovery Program. And that's a mouthful, Joe.
Yeah, they haven't come up with a good acronym for that one yet. They come up with some cute ones, but it doesn't work here. Simply put, is Milton was a front runner in a real aggressive solid waste restructuring, more than a decade ago, by instituting a pay-as-you-throw program, by maintaining a recycle center at the yard, by accepting various types of waste, conducting or reestablishing the household hazardous waste program that we have, and whatnot. And because of that, DEP has recognized that it makes sense to give some incentives from time to time, and they've instituted such a program. So by going through the points that are awarded for the size of community and the public served versus the various programs we carry, we're eligible for about $28,000 in grant money. In fact, there will be some award of, made, absolutely. It's competitive somewhat, but there will be a grant made. So what we're asking the selectmen to do is simply agree to participate in the program, to authorize the town administrator to sign contracts and other requirements on behalf of the board and get this project moving. It's no new programs being established, so there's no local match. It's getting credit for those things that we already do. We also looked at the point list and see if we were to augment or somehow enhance programs we're currently doing, would we get higher point ratings and therefore get more money to help offset them? And the answer is no. I mean, a great example is we'd get $1,500 more in grant money for carrying on one extra household hazardous waste day, which costs us $12,000. So it's really not worth doing that.
Yep.
So the money has to be accepted, has to stay in a dedicated solid waste account, and to be used for very specific purposes that are outlined within the terms of the grant.
Okay. But purposes we will be able to use.
Correctly. For example, like things we do on a regular basis, buy compost bins, buy recycle bins, production of the mailers that go out to all the households, and the annual calendar. So those things have costs, and
Do you get much call recycle bins anymore now that with single
it's
stream?
amazing. And I'm going to predict that next month we will have a run on them. They are perfect college moving containers at $7 a piece. They're perfect.
So we don't want to encourage that, though. We want people to use recycle.
I mean, just an aside, they've given up the tracking reporting program at DEP, ironically enough, but when they were tracking it right up through last year, we were historically #2 in the Commonwealth, right behind Martha's Vineyard, who by necessity, had to recycle, because of the challenging landfill issues they have over there. So we have a very, very good, successful program.
And we still are #2?
But they don't track it anymore, but
Okay.
I can't imagine that we
They're up,
slipped
yeah.
around.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'll propose a motion to approve the recommendation of the town engineer to authorize the town administrator to sign contractual material necessary to initiate the grant award process.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, Joe.
Okay, item 15 on the agenda is a discussion of the October town meeting articles. A list at this point, or?
Do not, this is your time, Mr. Chairman, to discuss what articles you would like to see on the fall town meeting. The only one I have to date is the wind turbine to repurpose the balance.
Yes, I mean, that's certainly one article. And my idea is just to put this on, because we haven't discussed it, obviously, as a board formally. The Capital Planning Committee is in favor of, of repurposing that wind turbine, $360,000, towards the DPW break room, which was approved last, I believe at the, Maytown meeting, and which has a similar useful life. And we've been putting that project off for quite a while now, trying to figure out how to fund it, and just a couple of you know, we try to make it one project between cemetery and
DPW.
DPW to try and get them to cooperate a little bit on it. That didn't work real well. So we came back again. So it would be a good use. The capital planning committee, like I said, does favor it, but we haven't had any discussion on it. But again, similar to the planning board, if we put it on there, we can always take it off if we decide that it's not the way we want to go.
So is the capital committee going to make a recommendation to the board on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just we're not meeting a ton. We will be meeting in August, so hopefully we'll take a vote on that in August and have somebody from capital planning come up and present that. Okay. And yeah, I'm not aware of any other.
One that I was going to suggest is that we, since we're going to be starting the move to the strong town administrator and getting the legislation filed, we talked before that next steps, there's going to be a lot of big next steps that we have to go through, but one of the smaller cleanup type items is, we talked about this back in May at the Maytown meeting. We'll want to change, we have an existing bylaw that governs the selection of the police chief. We do not have a bylaw that governs the selection of the fire chief, but former Chief Larson raised that along with former Selectman Joe McGettrick at the town meeting, that they really, at the time they wanted those positions to remain with the board, but as a result of the vote at town meeting, we wanted to try to put in place a formal process for that. And there's probably a good way to start would be cleaning up the existing bylaw. Now the question will be, when will the legislation be taking effect? So we could submit an article and if necessary, withdraw it at a later date. We're going to have a pretty busy fall town meeting with a lot of zoning articles potentially.
Yeah. Right.
But we could start at least the process of trying to do the easier one, which is really, that went through a long analysis and negotiation and a lot of, I think, input from a lot of different stakeholders back in the 80s when that bylaw went into effect. So a lot of the bigger thinking on it has been done. It's a matter of just cleaning up so that it's references to the Board of Selectmen will be references to the town administrator. So it's a fairly easy cleanup type item to put forward. The fire chief one is going to need a little bit more work because that does not currently exist. And that might be one to think of more for January for the Maytown meeting.
Right. But it could be crafted similar to the police chief article, really.
Yes. And Malcolm Larson did give us some information about the last fire chief selection process that we can compare and see how was that done, how is it similar or dissimilar to the police chief selection process. But we might as well start picking up some of the low-hanging fruit and trying to get that into place. So I would suggest that we put forward a cleanup housekeeping type article that furthers the goal of going to the strong town administrator at this point.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I guess the only thing is if it does pass and we change it, we may have to change it back if for whatever reason.
Well, yeah, or we could either just withdraw it or just send it back for further study in October if it were not the right time to do it.
Yeah, okay. Fine with that.
It sounded from the prior discussion that we might want to have a rescission article to authorize the bond authorization.
Yeah, we probably should put an article in there to rescind the bonding authorization for.
Yes, we'll have to rescind the balance of the bonding authorization, the 6.2, which I think is about 4.8 million, right? 6.2, about 4.8 million. So we have to rescind that bonding authorization.
Now, we might want to couple that, too. There's probably a lot of other little ones out there that, because we haven't done a rescinding in a few years.
Actually, I spoke with your town treasurer, and he's going to put a meeting together. And we're going to do just that. We're going to go through and see what bonding authorizations are out there that we haven't used, and we're going to put forward an article to rescind all those.
That's good.
Good.
Clean that up, get them off the books. So we hopefully we'll have that for the fall town meeting. I'm not sure if he'll get that work finished in time, or it may have to come back for your Maytown meeting.
Yeah. They really have no budgetary impact or anything. They do have a slight financial statement impact because they're contingent. It's a contingency that, you got an authorization to borrow.
I can't think of any others at this time that we would want to submit for October, but it sounds like there might be enough going forward anyway.
I think we've got quite a few, anyhow.
busy fall town meeting.
Okay, let's see. Next item on the agenda is the closing of the fall 2015 special town meeting warrant, which will be on August 4th.
Okay, so I'll propose a motion to approve August 4th, 2015 as the closing date and deadline for submission of articles for the fall special town meeting warrant.
Second.
Motion been made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, item 17 is a Hendry's demolition extension to July 31st, 2015. And this is for both the town's property and the Carrick Realty Trust 131 Elliott Street property.
So, Mr. Chairman, given that we have a site walk tomorrow that we'll all, I think we'll all be attending,
Yes.
with the Department of Environmental Protection at the Henry site, we probably want to see where that leads. So for discussion, I'll make a motion that we extend the deadline for the concurrent demolition of the town-owned property at 0 Central Avenue and the Carrick Realty Trust property at 131 Elliott Street from July 31st, 2015 to August 18th, 2015, which would be
Our
the next,
meeting.
well, the second to next meeting.
Yeah.
Give us a better sense of where we stand at that
Yeah.
point.
I am getting concerned, only because we've got a demo contractor that at some point in time, this process has to come to a conclusion, but you're right. I mean, seeing as we won't be meeting between now and the 31st, it does make sense.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, item 18 is a discussion of the 3 versus 5-member Board of Selectmen, kind of a follow-on discussion from the discussion we had at our last meeting with the Government Study Committee. And I understand, Ms. Conlon, you've done a little bit of research and can report a few things back.
Yes, I've done a little bit of research. Mainly, I've made some phone calls to some people. So I'll just kind of summarize some of the phone discussions that I've had. And I know that the Government Study Committee is going to be meeting on the 28th, which is a week from today. So I guess the question is, would some or all of us want to potentially go to that meeting and talk with the Government Study Committee about this issue any further? But and I circulated this afternoon for everyone to take a look at and let me know what your thoughts are. A draft of a letter to the editor for the Milton Times, because I read the article that was in the paper last week, and I thought that it adequately covered the issues that the Town Government Study Committee raised, but it really didn't mention the biggest concern that we had, which is that we're not looking at this issue in a vacuum. We're looking at this issue in the context of making a very significant change to town government by going to the strong town administrator. And that really didn't come through in the article, and I think we may want to point that out further. I did talk with a few people. I spoke with Kathleen O'Donnell, who is the attorney who has been working with us on the 40B projects. She has experience as a town council with a couple of other law firms, and has done a lot of not only 40B and real estate work, but general town council work. She is a town meeting member, and she was very surprised that the article would be going forward in October on the heels of the strong town administrator article that we just passed in May. I also talked with some former selectmen and some attorneys I work with who do a lot of work in the municipal law and finance area in particular, and their reaction was really the same, that you want to stagger change, you don't want to do too much change all at once. The person I thought would be very important to talk to, because I think that what we're hearing is that the Government Study Committee recommendation is building on the Department of Revenue's financial management review. So I did talk with Zach Blake, who is the person who did that review, and he is now the head of the, I'll probably butcher it, I think it's the Technical Assistance Division. He's now leading that department, and he was the person who came out and interviewed a lot of us when this study was going on a couple of years ago. So he's familiar with practices in a lot of towns, and he's familiar with what had been recommended to us. And his view was that we should get the strong town administrator in place first. Get the town administrator and the board used to the new relationship, the new dynamic, and recognizing that it's going to be a very significant change. And he pointed out that the town administrator we don't want to give her 2 new people to manage. He said that with a chuckle, because you think that it's always the town administrator reporting to the board, but we all know that a good CEO manages down, but they manage up also, and they have to manage the expectations and the demands of their board, as well as manage the employees. So while you're transferring a lot of day-to-day management duties to the town administrator, it's probably not the right time to be giving the town administrator more people to report to and more people to manage. I asked him if there was any towns that had gone through this kind of either back-to-back or in a short period of time or at the same time, and he was not aware of any. And and we talked, he gave me an example of Sudbury. He said that they recently went from a 3 to a 5-member board of selectmen, but they had already had a strong town manager in place for many, many years. So the consensus of the people I talked to is really the thoughts that I had, the thoughts that I think I heard from our board, and talking with the town administrator and others. I think there are reasons to slow this down. I'm pretty sure we said at the meeting when we had the Government Study Committee representatives here that, or at least I think I said, that we probably should not submit this in October. My recommendation would be that this should not go forward in October. It should go forward at a later date. It's an idea that the committee has done a lot of thoughtful work on, a lot of research, a lot of study. I know a lot of time was spent on it. Anne Marie and I both served on that committee back when that research got started a couple of years ago, and then it was dormant, and they turned their attention to other things, and they picked it back up again. So I don't think anyone's questioning the value of all the research that was done or the value of putting the question forward at some point. The idea is this the right time? A study committee won't be involved in implementing the change. I do think we made that point pretty strongly, that it's this board and the town administrator that will implement all of the changes that are going to be needed for the town administrator, and we probably do need to go through a budget cycle, an audit cycle, go through 1 or 2. Zach held out the idea of a couple of years possibly before we take up another change. So my view would be to recommend or request, whatever the right wording might be, however we'd want to word it, would request the Town Government Study Committee not put this article forward in October, and we'll take this up at a later date. They may not agree, and they are a committee that, even though some of their members are appointed by us, the majority are appointed by the moderator. They submitted articles to the May town meeting. They previously did not do that. They previously reported to town meeting, and they're now a committee that's, the majority are appointed by somebody other than us. So those are my thoughts on the issue, and I wanted to hear what some of your thoughts were and see whether you thought it might be worthwhile to explain. I think we need to explain better what our position is, and that's why I proposed possibly a letter to the editor. But if the board doesn't want to do that, it's not a normal or a typical practice for us, but on an issue that's this important, that we potentially could have made 2 waves of major changes on top of us in a short period of time, I do think that we as the elected board, and as the board that's going to be responsible for either making this succeed or having it fail, we need to get our voice out there a little bit more and explain what our concerns are.
Yeah, I want to just follow up on some of those comments, Katie. I first want to publicly thank the Town Government Study Committee, who's comprised of several accomplished public servants, and very effective ones at that, and commend them for the work that they've done and the presentation they did give us. I also know that the Warrant Committee met on this, and they're in favor of this. I've done a lot of research. I've worked in a strong form of government. I know the success that the strong form of government, why it will be so successful in Milton once implemented. The one that I worked under had a 3-member board. When you have a good, strong CEO, in which we've had a 3-member board now since the early 1900s. I think maybe even the late 1800s. So you have a good, strong CEO. I don't think it's so necessary to have that 5-member board so quick. I think that maybe over time it makes sense to go to that, and maybe because of the size of our town. And but we have changed selectmen 6 times in the last 10 years. So if the argument is to be made that we're looking at trying to get different voices in, well, there's been quite a bit of change and quite a few different voices that have had a chance to implement their change based upon why they were elected. So with that all being said, I'm having a tough time, really supporting it now, right now, having, one, worked under it, seeing how significant it can be with a 3-member board, and how effective it can be. But two, the timing of it. I find it to be a very difficult time when you're trying to, when you're getting a town administrator, if it's Anne Marie, or let's say that down the road and, it takes shape later and it's somebody else, number one, to attract somebody of incredible talent and to bring them into under such conditions of change, that's going to be difficult. And I've talked to other town administrators in other places who work in very stable towns, and they have echoed that comment to me. And so I hope that that people would see that, and that I think that, if this does go through, I said at the last meeting, I'm not opposed to a 5-member board down the road. I am not opposed to it, and think it could work very well down the road, but not so much right now. But I think that if it does go to that point, and if it does get the movement, we were elected by the residents to make decisions, and this board. And I think that this board is a very stable board comprised of people who care deeply about Milton and the taxpayers in this town. And I think that we're more than capable, to make the proper decisions. And one of the things that I would advocate for is putting it out there to the taxpayers and to the residents for a vote if it got to that point. I think that would be a responsible way, for the town, to come to consensus on it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement, I think, with what both of you have said. I have no problem with putting it out to the voters. I think, when the time comes, it should be. I do think as we implement the strong town administrator, we're going to find a lot of bumps in the road, a lot of things we didn't anticipate. There's going to be, a lot of, backtracking and backfilling and trying to figure out how this all works. And I think to go through that and go through that with 2 brand new people, just doesn't make a lot of sense. It just, it would just, I think, exacerbate that problem, not help it.
Or potentially 3, Mr. Chairman.
Potentially 3, you're right, yeah. But certainly 2, yeah.
And then it gets to the point of selecting a new town administrator, should it take a while, and should the legislature pass that in a different period of time. And as I said earlier, the people of Milton elected us to make decisions like that. And I would be very cautious of bringing in, potentially 3 new members to make a decision that would be so critical to the long-term future of the town.
Mm. So that being said, I do agree with the, also with perhaps a letter to the editor, just so our views get out there more broadly and more specifically, I think.
The reason I suggest that is because I think if you just read the article without having watched the tape of the meeting or seen it live on TV, the context that, what we were trying to bring out is that, and I think this is probably true of a study committee versus the town management, which is what we currently are. And that will be more of a board of directors when it becomes a strong town administrator with more of a policy board. But you can look at the question in a vacuum, and a lot of the research that was done by the members of the government study committee, and I have reached out to a few of had a busy several days at work, so I haven't been able to make as many phone calls the last 4 or 5 days as I would have liked to. But I am planning on trying to call some of the others and just talk the issue through a little more with them and let them be sure that we all understand the different perspectives that I think we're coming from. You can look at the question in a vacuum and have one view of it, but when you look at the question, when you consider that it's going to be on the heels of a very significant other change, that really tips it for me that we should go a little bit more slowly. And I think Zach had some good points about getting everybody used to the new dynamic, getting the strong town administrator firmly in place before we look to make other change. I would support it going to the voters when the time is right. But the big concern I have right now is too much change at once. We need to manage change. We need to make sure the first wave of it is working and that everybody's satisfied. And it's going to, it bears repeating, it's going to be a change not only for the board, and for the town administrator, but for town employees, for department heads, for members of the public. So this is a significant change. There are some towns that have gone to a 5-member board and retained a weak town administrator, and that's not the model that anyone recommends. The MMA, the DOR, others have all suggested that the strong town administrator is a very important change to make, and that's really, we should focus on making that work and work well, and then take up any other question of change later.
I totally agree.
As do I.
So do we want to go into, see if we can go into the Town Government Study Committee meeting and talk with them a little further about it? Whether it's all of us, whether it's one of us? What are your thoughts on that?
I would think if we're going to do it, we probably all should do it.
Yeah, I'm happy to attend.
You know, I don't know if it'll do a lot of good, but at least we'll get our point across again.
It may not, but I think we need to be on record as to what our position is and be clear about what our reasoning is, because, you know, town meeting, if it does go forward in October, town meeting will decide it, and I think we want town meeting members to understand that the implementation for this is not going to be in the hands of an advisory committee. It's going to be on this board that's going to be dealing with major, major change, and we need to communicate that and explain that early.
I agree.
So what about writing a letter to the editor? I circulated. I sent everybody a draft
I
this
haven't seen
afternoon.
it yet, but,
Okay.
But I will read it tonight. And,
Okay.
I've seen it, yep, thank you.
But in concept, I have no problem with it. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Should we post a notice of a meeting on the 28th, and will you communicate to Rick Neely and let him know we'd like to come in?
Sure.
How do you want to handle it?
Yeah, I will do that. That's not a problem. Let's see, when's the 28th?
Next Tuesday.
Tuesday? That's fine. Sure.
I don't think you have any meetings that night. I
Yeah,
just
we don't.
checked.
Okay.
At some point, we'll want to go in and, somebody, was it you, David? Somebody mentioned the warrant committee's in favor. Obviously, the warrant committee needs to hear from
Yeah,
us
so at
as to
some
what
point
our
in time, we want to
viewpoint is
go
on this.
before them.
I did hear that there was a favorable reception to it, but again, I think people are focusing on the concept rather than the implementation schedule at this
Right.
point.
Yeah,
And the burden on the town administrator and on others if we were to make change too quickly.
Well, I
Huge
think-
change too quickly.
I think change is very important, and I think that this town constantly needs to change and evolve, but I think it's how you manage the change that's even more important. And I think you need to, as you all articulated, you need to slow it down a little bit. You need to get your strong town administrator in place, who's definitely going to be tweaking and fleshing out as that person takes on those new duties. And so I agree with all three of you. I think you need to, not opposed to 5-member Board of Selectmen, but it needs to just slow it down a little bit.
I think there's an awful lot that we're working on as well, and we're going to, as Katie said, take the burden on of helping transition as well. And because we did have our goals and objectives, which we did a couple weeks ago, and a lot of those things are going to take shape in moving forward in this new form of government. So,
Right. And clearly, you know, I think our goal is to have, it's impossible to have a total corporate model in government
Right.
that doesn't work. I mean, because there are
You've been
there
trying,
are laws.
Tom.
There are laws. But the idea of a more streamlined, you know, corporate-looking form, I think, is a good thing.
yeah, efficiency and
Efficiency, economy, and to do that and to attract the best town administrator, they really need the ability to be able to control enough of the town to be effective and make effective change. And right now, that
it
is
needs
very
some time.
difficult.
You know, when you know, put in a little analogy, when you take over a, say, football program that hasn't won so much, and you hire a good coach, you do give him 4 or 5 years to get his
do it.
get his team in place.
But he also needs the tools to be able
But
to
he
do
needs
it.
those
Right.
tools.
And the tools
support.
here are to, you know, I'm not saying do away with elected boards at all, but I am saying that the Government Study Committee has to look at ways of at least getting the maintenance of you know, parks and the maintenance of cemetery consolidated. You know, I think that is a town function. Certainly the park programs and the cemetery programs and the way the cemetery is run in that sense can be effectively done by a separate board. But I think at some point in time, you know, if we're going to give that town administrator the tools he needs to make effective change, they've got to have that kind of autonomy.
Yeah, and I'm glad somebody mentioned the other boards. One thing that I think not everyone is focused on yet is when the strong town administrator is in place, when the legislation goes through, we finally start implementing that, it's going to be a process. One of the roles that the town administrator is going to have is preparing and recommending budgets to the boards, including the warrant committee.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Milton has a very strong, I would say a strong warrant committee. The warrant committee is hearing from a lot of independent boards, making a recommendation, but the selectmen aren't really actively, not just the selectmen, but the town administrator. So the town management is really not presenting a budget to the warrant committee and saying, here's the budget we proposed, have at it, ask questions, make changes, you might recommend something different, but we're presenting you, Tom, you've been very strong in raising this point over the years, that management in most other scenarios, maybe not every community, but in a lot of communities, management is presenting a budget to the warrant committee. I happened to have a conversation with this recently with somebody in another town that does have a strong financial manager, a strong town administrator or town manager, and it's a very different dynamic. The budget is really being driven by the executive branch, and cuts, selectmen were voting on cuts in whether to make cuts or prevent cuts in areas like the schools. Now, that may not be something that Milton wants to do. There's all, and that raises another point. There's all kinds of models. We're hearing a lot about, well, in Easton, only the chairman talks to the town administrator. Well, that's 1 out of 351 cities and towns. There's all different ways of doing this. But the warrant committee is going to be impacted by the strong town administrator. The town administrator, and maybe we'll be able to start, Tom, you probably have a better sense whether we're in a position to really try to do it this year or if it's a year out, but presenting the budget to the warrant committee and saying, okay, here's what the management team has put in place. Now let's see whether you accept it, whether you have minor revisions, do you have major revisions you want to, they'd still recommend to town meeting, but they'd have something to start with.
Right.
That's a big change. So when we say there's going to be different stakeholders impacted by the strong town administrator, that's just one example. And I don't think everybody's thinking of that. I think everyone's just thinking, okay, the town administrator is going to take work away from the selectmen. Well, partly, but it's a lot more than that. And there's a lot of different models, and we should keep that in mind, because it's not going to just be, I don't think Milton is going to be the same way and just say only one person talks to the town administrator. If you're an elected member of the board and you have a constituent complaint or an issue or whatever, something that you want to bring up, and maybe you, let's say it's a 5-member board and you talk with the chair, maybe the chair and the member don't agree, and maybe there's a reason to go directly to the town administrator. So I don't think we should I'm concerned about people making generalizations and just assuming that this is how things are going to happen. I don't think we can say that with any certainty.
Right.
And we're talking about a change that gets made. Usually change doesn't get reversed anytime soon. So if we make a major change, we're going to be living with that for a long period of time. There's going to be a lot of different people serving on boards, and how the boards function, how future boards communicate with each other, with the town administrator, that's all going to be subject to change, driven largely by the people who are in the roles. So we have to be careful when we make these generalizations. You know, this is how town A does it versus town B. This is going to be an evolving process, and everyone that I've talked, I'm planning on talking to a few more people and having hopefully more to report back, because I do think that this is just a very important implementation issue.
And I'd just like to caution people on the fact that our goal is to attract a very good leader. And
when the time comes, right?
The time comes. It really is. No, I mean, we have one now.
Yes.
Okay? But it's at some point in time, we're going to have to do that. And you have to have everything lined up. And, so,
Right.
Again, so to reiterate, utmost of confidence in Anne Marie, but at some point in time, we're going to have to go down that road, and I think it's very important that we're thorough. So,
Hardly agree. Okay. Anything else you want to add on that, or I will contact Rick and see if we can get into his next meeting on, would you say, the 28th? Okay. Okay, item 19 on the agenda is contract approval of a fire union local 1116. Have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve and sign the collective bargaining agreement between the town and fire union local 1116 for the period of July 1st, 2013 to June 30th, 2016.
I'll second the motion.
Motion been made, second. Any further discussion?
I just want to thank the town administrator for all her work. I don't want to interrupt. If you want to give a
That's okay.
report first, this was the last union to, so you can report on this. I know the town administrator lost a weekend of her time
Trying to pull everything
dealing with
together.
this
Yeah.
while this went through the process, and you can fill in the details,
She
but
missed the fireworks.
that's right. I know. I know.
You heard them.
I did hear them. Thank you, Ms. Carmen. This is a 3-year contract, 14, 15, 16. It's a 2% in 14, wage adjustment 2% in 15, a 1-1 split in 16, which is 1% on the first day, a 1% on the last day. And in the third year, anybody that's been in service for 10 years will receive a 1% step increase as well. There's a minimum increase to night differential, an increase in the second year of $200 for EMT stipend, and in the third year, another $400 increase in EMT stipend. And I'm glad the process has been concluded.
And overall, not an awful lot different than what we offered.
No, it wasn't. It was pretty close to what, the dollars are pretty close to what we had offered in our last package, but.
Okay.
Well, we had 7 unions all out at one time, and they've settled at various times. This has been just a very long period of a lot of negotiating and a lot of work for Anne Marie, so
Guess what? It's time to start all over again.
I know it. I know it. It goes by fast, doesn't it?
I know.
So thank you for all your work.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, item 20 is the appointment of the Director of Planning and Community Development, and I'll just read this motion. Unless you want to.
I'll move that we approve William B. Clark, Jr. to the position of Director of Planning and Community Development to serve through June 2016.
Okay, I'll second it. Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay. See, item 21 are board and committee appointments, Airplane Noise Advisory Committee.
I move that we reappoint the following members to the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee. Roxanne Musto of 101 Milton Street, Caroline Kinsella, Director of the Board of Health, Christopher Zambuto of 96 Hilltop Street, David Godine of 196 School Street, and Muna Killingbeck of 351 Atherton Street to serve through July 2016. I think that should say Director of the Department of Health for Caroline Kinsella.
And I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, item 22 is board and committee appointments, Disability Commission.
I'll make a motion to appoint William D. Enos, Jr. of 49 Parkway Crescent to the Commission on Disability to serve through July of 2016. To reappoint the following members to the Commission on Disability: Diane DiTullio Agostino of 147 Ridgewood Road, and Nathan Bork of 88 Wharf Street, Unit 410, to serve through July 2016. Ryan O'Connell of 24 Horton Place, and Leslie Collins of 24 Briarfield Road to serve through July 2017. And Joseph Krondeck, Building Commissioner, and Daniel C. Sacco of 17 Garfield Road to serve through July of 2018.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Item 23, boards and committee appointment, Milton Village/Central Avenue Revitalization Committee.
Make a motion to appoint Brian Furs of 630 Brush Hill Road as the Planning Board's designee on the Milton Village Central Ave Revitalization Committee to serve through April of 2016.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Item 24, boards and committee appointment, Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Make a motion to appoint Cheryl Tagayas of 660 Canton Avenue as the Planning Board's designee on the Master Plan Implementation Committee through August of 2016.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Is the Board of Selectmen supposed to appoint somebody to this or not?
Yes.
We are.
Yes.
That's what I thought. So, Have we got,
I will have that on a future
okay.
August
You do
agenda.
have somebody? Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, boards and committee appointment, retirement board.
I'd like to move to reappoint Deputy Police Chief John King to the Retirement Board to serve through July of 2018.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Item 26 is the town administrator's report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as the police chief talked about earlier today, I reached out to the police department to conduct a training seminar at Town Hall, a safety and security training session. And what I would like to do is it's going to be about a half day to conduct this training session with all of the town employees. So what I would like to do is I would like to take a Friday, since Fridays are a 5.5-hour workday, take the day, and I will publicly announce this well in advance to the citizens of the town. But I want to close Town Hall for business. Town Hall employees will be working that day, but close the Town Hall for business in order to conduct that training seminar. So I will look to make sure that it's not during when tax bills are due or water bills are due or election time or anything like that, but I would like to be able to put that. I think it's an important program and training seminar that we need to conduct here at Town Hall, and we're going to be moving out to the outskirts of our other off-site locations, Council on Aging, DPW yard. I think the library started on their training session.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
That's great. And Officer Jack Richmond is
Yes.
orchestrating that?
Yes.
He
He's
does
excellent.
a fabulous job, so we
Excellent.
publicly commend him for the service he gives us every time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the only thing I might add to is it something you want to make sure, happens on somewhat of a regular basis, a training, retraining kind of thing.
That's correct.
So, be it a couple of times a year or whatnot, but, it's just really preparedness and,
That's right. So I will advertise in plenty, and I'll talk about it at future meetings when the date comes closer, and I'll get the word out through cable, through the websites, through Milton Times, and let people know that we will be open that day, but just not open for business.
That's great.
And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Chair's report, I really have nothing to report right now. Member reports.
Yeah, I just want to, read in the paper today and want to, just put a special thanks and a mention of note to 3 teenage boys who
I did read
helped
that, yes.
save
in South Boston.
a drowning swimmer. John Feeney, Joey Binda, and Elliot, I hope I pronounce it right, Chavez. I think it's just tremendous that, these kids, and I know a couple of them are athletes. I've seen their names in the paper for Milton High football. I just think it's great that they really took the initiative and,
Yep.
really.
They're in the right place and they came through.
Yeah, and they came through. It was just a nice thing.
Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, I want to take a minute or two to mention that we're at the end of a very active and busy year on the 40B front. I've been going to the 40B hearings along with the town administrator. These have been very large and complex projects for Milton. We've had 2. We started last July with the Henry's project. The Randolph Ave 40B was decided last week, and the board will be writing its written decision, but the vote was taken to approve 35 units at that site. I think we should thank the Board of Appeals. They're appointed by the moderator. They are not our appointed committee, but they are a very hardworking committee. They have 9 members. They sit in panels of 3. The 6 who were involved in the 40B cases were, and the most recent one was John Leonard, who's their chairman, very experienced and very good chairman for the Board of Appeals. We're lucky to have him, and the other members, Jeffrey Mullen and Virginia Donahue King, who are on the Randolph Avenue 40B project. The Henry's project was chaired by Brian Hurley, and Ted Daber and Frank O'Brien also served on that. The Board of Appeals members mentioned at all of their hearings that they're an adjudicatory board, so they hear the evidence that's before them and they decide the cases. But the town and abutters and others really, as well, of course, as the developers, have to raise public safety issues, any design issues, things that we want to bring to the attention of the board in these cases. And all of our department heads during the last year, even more than the last year, because prior to starting the first 40B hearing, we had all the comment and public response letters to the Mass Housing Partnership and others. So I think our department heads really deserve a lot of credit for the work that they put in the past year, and that includes some of the people who are here tonight: Jack Grant, Richard Wells, Joe Lynch, and John Thompson, Joe Prondak, Bill Clark. Also, Alex Whiteside from the Planning Board. He offered comments on both projects that I think were very helpful. The Conservation Commission currently still has the Randolph Avenue 40B project pending before it, so they've put in a considerable amount of time. But I mainly wanted to thank two people in particular, and I think as a board we want to thank them. The first one is Kathleen O'Donnell. We hired her last fall to represent the Board of Selectmen and the town department heads before the Board of Appeals. So she was there representing our interests, to coordinate with our department heads, to bring issues to light. And that really meant having a lot of meetings between the department heads, the town administrator, Kathleen, to work on fleshing out the issues and presenting them. So I think she did really excellent work on behalf of the town, and grateful to Kathleen O'Donnell for all of her efforts. And the quarterback of the team was the town administrator, Anne Marie Fagan. She attended all but one of the couple of dozen hearings. She could not make the last one because she had a prior commitment, but this was a substantial amount of time. If it was a substantial amount of time for our departments, it was a substantial amount of time for the quarterback who was pulling it all together with Kathleen and with the board. So this has been an unusual process for Milton. I just think we should publicly comment on it at this meeting, that hopefully going forward we'll have less meetings for everybody to go to, and at least we had two of them pending at one time, and it was an awful lot of work for the town, and I just think that we should acknowledge all the efforts, and hopefully going forward this will mean a few less meetings for Anne Marie and the department heads to go to in the evening. And thank you to Kathleen, Anne Marie, all the department heads for representing the town's interests. Well, whether people like the decision or don't, the Board of Appeals members, the town department heads, everyone put in an awful lot of time during the last 12 months to achieve the outcomes that were achieved. And we had 57 units approved at Henry's, 35 at Randolph. We'll see, we'll see where they go. There could potentially be an appeal, but I think we've reached a milestone in that we've now put the active phase of this behind the department heads. There could be other work that goes on in some context.
Yeah, but clearly because of all that hard work and because of the zoning Board of Appeals, taking all that information in and making a good decision, brought the density from 90 units down to 35 units, yeah. Which, again, like you said, we don't know where it's going to go from here. It most likely will be appealed, and then we'll see. But I think it was a good decision. And one thing that was really interesting, Chairman Leonard at one of the last two meetings that they had, they met twice last week to talk about their decision and come to the decision. He said that of all, they had something like 80 comment letters on the Randolph Ave 40B. He said all of them said we're in favor of some affordable housing here. It's the density. It's the massive scale of the project for a site that has a lot of wetlands on it. That's a very small portion of it is buildable. So he brought that point out that none of the comment letters were opposed in the concept to affordable housing, and I just thought that was interesting that he brought that out and probably worth mentioning. Very sure. Okay, we had no citizens speak tonight, but any responses to prior citizen speak by anybody? Okay, item 30 is any future agenda items.
We'll probably want to put the boards and goals and objectives back on. I do. David sent me his list.
Yeah, I
might need your
mine,
list.
yes.
And then I'm happy to work on combining them
Yeah.
and then bringing them back for further discussion and
Okay,
vote.
that's a good idea.
Just kind of putting them all into a concise plan.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll propose a motion to enter into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, taking, lease, or value of real property, 0 Central Ave, believing that such discussion in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the governing body, and to return to open session for the purpose of adjourning.
Second.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Curley, yes. Okay.